morning to you, laddies! Wait, wrong intro. Sorry about that, I forget that I'm not fully Irish like a certain coffee-haired YouTuber. I'm only a quarter Irish, which probably explains why I can't hold my liquor. So if you all didn't guess by how I started this video, I'm discussing a topic which is Jacksepticeye related. Appropriate since this video came out on his birthday, so hey, happy birthday, Sean! If you have been on YouTube for as long as I have, you probably recognize a few names that sound familiar and have made a brand for themselves on this platform. Jacksepticeye, or Sean William McLaughlin, being one of them. It's hard to believe how far this one guy has gotten. Starting out his internet career in the early 2010s, he has come out as one of the most iconic stars on YouTube for nearly a decade. And to think at one point he lived in a cabin in the woods, and yes, that was a Night in the Woods reference, in the middle of Ireland. It still amazes me how long ago that really was. But I'm not here to talk about the man, the myth, the legend himself. I'm here to talk about his games. More specifically, games that he's been in rather than ones he's actually played. Fan games have always been such an enigma in the video game industry. Picture this, you happen to be a fan of some sort of franchise or character, either from a cartoon, comic, or other video game itself. You're so fascinated by it, you want to dedicate yourself to make something to honor it. Chances are you're probably good at coding, and you take what you know, and in the next few months to years, depending on what type of game you make, you have your own fan game. Fan games usually start out as ROM hacks where someone would change up the code to make certain changes to the level design, character designs, or anything really to make it seem like a whole new experience. A best example of this would be Sonic ROM hacks. Some could be simple, like the Onion Ring ROM hack where Sonic gets fat for every ring he gets. Then there are those that take it a level up by making the Green Hills set on fire, changing up the storyline, and even giving us new boss battles. And this is all just in the first Sonic game. Sadly, an issue with fan games is that there is a high chance of them being copyrighted by the owners of the official company the said games are based off of. Unless said company gives you the rights to make those games, you're pretty much going to deal with a lawsuit on your butt. There are some loopholes though. For example, you can't have a game with a similar setup and mechanics as another, as long as it isn't a direct ripoff of said game. Or maybe you make the game and receive no profit from it and sell it for free. May not officially get you out of the loop, but it may end up giving you a better chance of escaping any lawsuits. Not many companies tolerate fan games, Nintendo being one of them, as they happen to be the most protective of their property, only allowing their characters and games to be distributed by them. Sega, though, is actually a fair game, especially with Sonic games. I mean, have you seen how about the recent one have been? They probably figured, now let's have the fans do the work for us. Why not? We're pretty much lazy at this point. The most important thing to remember when making these parodies or fan creations is to ensure you either have the consent of the person you're basing them off of, or ensuring the audience of such characters and franchises is not yours and give credit to the original company, as well as making sure you make no profit off the creations. Though it may not make you in the official clear, it should at least give you some leeway. However, YouTuber fan games are different because, well, this shouldn't come too much as a shock, many YouTubers are pretty okay with you making a game about them, especially Let's Players who dedicate their channels to recording video games. They seem pretty lenient on the subject. I admit, it's very cool of them to allow us as the fans to make fully fleshed out games based around them and the work they've put into. I'd be lying if I said I haven't seen a few myself. The most fan games I've seen are either for PewDiePie, Markiplier, and of course Jack himself. I've seen more than enough Markiplier games in my lifetime, far more than I could count to certain. And as for PewDiePie, meh. These three have even played some of these fan-made games themselves, and usually end up praising the creators for them. I mean, the people spend a good amount of time on these games they made in your glory. Least you can do is give them a shout-out. Jacksepticeye has played a few fan games himself, not as much anymore nowadays, but he has played them still on his channel. However, on the concept of Septiceye games, there has been one that tends to stand out and has gained a following. On December 27th, 2017, a small YouTube channel called The Power of Friends Games uploaded an 8-bit style RPG featuring Jack and his egos. The game was titled Septiscape, a unique and very clever name to be honest. Based on the trailer alone, it seems pretty decent looking, nothing too outstanding, but also not too bad either. I ended up doing a Let's Play of this game with my friend Wolf Mama on her channel, which I will leave a link to in the description. But yeah, it was a pretty good game. It baffles me though that Jack hasn't really played this game out of all of his other fan games. I get it, he's a busy guy, and I'm sure he wants to steer clear of repeating things over and over. And looking back, yeah, this game seems a bit outdated with certain references and character designs, but I will give the devs the benefit of the doubt since they released this in 2018 when Jack was really changing up his style, and it took them a while to make this to begin with. I mean, most games usually take years to make at this point. Strangely enough, despite this fan game not being recognized by the one person it was for, this has been a very strong and popular gathering for it. Anytime someone mentions Jacksepticeye fan games, I usually hear this one pop up. But why though? What makes this game really stick out aside from the fact it's the first of a supposed trilogy? Well, let's go inside the mind of the Irish potato himself and review Septiscape. The story starts off as we see Jack waking up on his couch in his living room. Apparently, he fell asleep there and is in the middle of making something for himself to eat. Starting the game off in a realistic way. I appreciate the diversity there already. Also, I highly doubt that this would be the setup Jack has in his house he is currently in. I mean, I may not have seen what his place looks like, but I highly doubt he has a glass table in the kitchen, which is next to the laundry room. Then again, it's the devs world, I guess. They do what they want. After eating some buttered toast, insert identity reference here, he goes into the bathroom to look in a mirror and... Oh, Jack, you don't look so good. So it turns out that Antis is controlling Jack and has sealed a YouTuber away in the far corners of his mind, which we soon see after the title sequence that Sean himself is where Anti locked him up. Thankfully, he doesn't have to stay there for too long, because soon enough, Chase Brody comes to his aid, wielding the pickaxe of the bro Africanness. He and Jack then set out to find the good doctor himself, Henrik von Schnippelstein, to figure out how to get the Irish bean back to his body. And thus we go into an abandoned hospital, searching for the missing doctor as we see many tools and blood on the floor. Whew, I've seen enough horror movies to know where this is going. One of the things that this game does differently than most other fan games is that rather than have it be about references to that of Jack and his life outside and in YouTube, the developers create a story centering around the YouTuber and his alter egos. YouTuber alter egos are a new concept in fandom centering around these celebrities, but how the fandom sees them versus how the creators make them out to be can determine how their personalities and characters interact in the game. Jacksepticeye is no stranger to egos, so many canon fan-made ones. At this point, he can host a family reunion with them. While the egos have been implemented in games before, usually they're just there as a reference or some sort of guide. As far as I see, this is the first YouTuber fan game that has you play as said characters and get to really know them. I like this premises and gives us an insight of how the devs see the septic egos. After listening to some audio logs left by Henrik to give us some exposition, we find out that Anti went to the German doctor for help. Turns out he lacks the ability to feel any positive emotions and wanted the good doctor to run some experiments to make him like the other egos. At first it seems to have worked until the dosage was increased and gave Anti a violent tendency. And we also get to see Robbie the zombie eating some green stuff and running away. Definitely a highlight of the game in my opinion. Not only did Anti end up with negative side effects of the serum, but it seems that he somehow corrupted it and is now able to corrupt the other egos and even parts of the mindscape. This is what causes him to imprison Jack in his mind and take over his body. However, there are some bad effects to this, such as making Chase's world crumble and him being the only one to get out of there. And it seems that the corruption that Anti is causing is spreading fast. So now it's up to Sean and his egos to find Anti and stop him before it's too late. The main objective here is to find all the egos and to help them overcome the corruption of their souls. Once you battle them in an RPG turnstile-based mechanic, Sean is able to unleash a small orb of white light right at them and heal their corrupted souls. Something that isn't really explained until the end of the game, but there is a reasoning behind it. I like the idea of this story. It doesn't take too long to get to the main objective. And while it does seem like a repetitive mission, getting through each stage is so unique and different that they really stand out. You have to go through a Robbie mini-boss in order to get to Schneep, you have to locate the university and maneuver through the sewers of a city to find Jackie Boy Man, then you go through a forest and carnival and play a game of who tells the truth just to get to Marvin, and going through a maze just to locate Chase, who was secretly corrupt this whole time. Speaking of the characters, all the septic egos are here. We have Chase Brody, the cool father that just wants everyone to love him, also the most OP character out of all the egos. Schneep, the German doctor that acts as the white mage in the group, as well as the father figure for everyone. Jack, a boy man, the superhero and protector of his own city, then crazy cat lover. Marvin the Magnificent, the sassiest of all the egos by far and most feminine. There's also Robbie the Zombie, who, as I mentioned before, is our first boss battle and tends to be the comic relief at times, always talking in small sentences and being a glutton. Have I mentioned how much I love this guy? Being Septiceye, another fan-made ego, who we don't see until the near end of the game, but his dialogue and interactions are just so adorable, and it's clear that he's depressed over losing one of his friends that was another ego of Jack's, and I want to love him and hug him and ensure him everything is going to be okay. Finally, we have Jameson Jackson, who shows up in the carnival section of the mission, and he's just there. He just tells you where to find Marvin's house, and that's it. He doesn't even have his own avatar card when he speaks. Poor JJ got cheated. The portrayal of the septic egos are the key factor in this game. They do match the canon somewhat, but most of it has been based on the devs and the fans of the community. There are these television sets that run a 24/7 ego information channel, and depending on which area you are in, will give you the information of a certain ego. False information according to them, though, to be fair, can we really say it's fake news? I don't know, as someone that uses the fandom wiki, it's hard to really tell which is canon or not. However, that is the main premise of this adventure. The fact that Jack has to understand that they aren't just characters, but real people that the fandoms have helped bring to life. And in a way, that is true, especially when we consider how many fan-made egos there are, and the fact that Auntie is a mixed creation of both Jack and the fans. Not to mention many headcanons that the communities have made up in regards to the main septic egos, such as Stacy being a manipulative and abusive wife towards Chase. I can't say this is a good headcanon or not, since we haven't seen that much Chase content as of late, but I have to admit, it's an interesting concept. Very disturbing one, but in a sense I could see it. The main lesson to take away from this journey is for Jack to see the egos as more than just characters he created. Seems like a very weird and unnecessary lesson to learn, especially during a time when the mindscape is on the verge of destruction. A lesson does stick with you, especially towards the very end. So far, we've talked about the plot and the characters, and they're both pretty solid. What else is there left? Well, the adventure takes place in the mindscape, basically inside of Jack's mind. Each ego, at least the main ones, have their own world for them to live in. For Schneep, he lives in his hospital because he's a doctor and he works there, so of course. Jackie lives in Attitude City, which makes up the university, a church, and the sewers. Marvin has his own carnival area, and Chase lives in a suburb neighborhood, I believe. I don't know, since we don't really get to see most of his world since it was destroyed after Auntie took over. Auntie also lives out in the woods in a small cabin. Again, another horror movie reference. While the areas themselves don't stick out as much for the homes of the egos, they do their job, and their setups are pretty nice, with as much detail as you can get. Each area fits the homes of the egos well, representing their characteristics. I mean, a hospital for Schneepelstein? Of course, that just seems obvious. I don't know if the fan-made egos have their own world, as far as I know, not in this game at least. Bing seems to live in Chase's world with Robbie, and Jameson is with Marvin, I guess? He does end up getting his own world in the sequel, and yes, there is a sequel to this game, which I promise to cover on a later date. The battle mechanics are pretty standard, just a simple RPG style base. You take turns to attack the opponent. Depending on how many members are in your party will determine how many attacks you can do. You can either do standard attacks, which deal a good amount of damage depending on the type of level. Then there are the specials, moves that take up magic points, and TP, which does not mean toilet paper. I assume these are points you get for getting hits or being hit. They deal better damage, but some of them require such points to make attacks, and some of them also rely on chance. Sometimes you use a special move to do some status damage to the enemy, but sometimes it doesn't work. It's a pretty cheap style of gaming, I will admit, but it's the easiest to make, and the battles are somewhat fun. Honestly, it's mostly satisfying to see Chase do over 8,000 points worth of damage. There's really only 8 boss battles in total, but as you go through the world, you run into these strange goop creatures that represent some sort of negative emotions. Anxiety, paranoia, intrusive thoughts, failure, and pretty much any other Septicize's characters you could think of. For every time you defeat an enemy, you get boss bucks, which is the currency of the world, and use that to get equipment and items you can use in battle, such as items to heal your party, or getting equipment to apply to the other egos to make them stronger. You also get experience points, which will help level up your party. The higher your level, the more damage you do to the enemy. Again, pretty common mechanic in these games, but they are the easiest ones to really make, and the battles are pretty entertaining. Nothing too special, but nothing bad either. And as someone that loves to spend all their time grinding to get everyone to a certain level, I don't really mind this at all too much. The game itself isn't really that long, takes about 6 to 7 hours to complete it, the story mode at least, but it's entertaining from start to finish. There are these cutscenes that play out at times, usually when you meet an ego or before an important battle, and they're very well drawn, I'll admit. The style itself is very unique, making it chibi-like rather than anime or realistic versions that most of these fan-made games do. But don't let those cute faces and bright colors fool you, because much like Steven Universe and Adventure Time, those cheery characters and vivid pictures are misleading and hide some depressing and dark stuff underneath. I wouldn't say this game is dark to the point of other RPGs like The Crooked Man, but there is some heavy stuff to really take into account that they don't sugarcoat. Abuse, manipulation, losing the ones you love, and even experiencing death. Well damn, for a fan-made game this really takes a turn. It's not really expanded on, and they don't go into too depth about it, but it's still there, and they are way more than just hints. You're gonna want to remember that for the sequel. And if you are wondering about references, I'm happy to report they do exist here. While there aren't that many that most fan games pack into at once, they do appear more as Easter eggs than anything else. For example, the puppet Chad from Chase's video is the one that sells you the equipment and the items, always asking if you want to buy any weed. Get it? Because Chase has weed and Chad sells it in the items. Then moving on. You get to meet up with Danny's sex bag and the Cool Patrol to find out where Jackie's hideout is, and to do that, you have to figure out the lyrics from the music video. You need to locate the code to get to the Deep Lab to find Henrik, the code being his birthday, as well as the first video you ever appeared on Jack's channel. A carnival that looks like it's from a Renaissance, which I guess is a throwback to when he played Banished? But I might be making a big stretch. There's also a maze based around an overnight watch from a Christmas stream he did. That's pretty cool. Oh hey look, a talking flower that watches over everything and turns out to be the true main antagonist of the game. No matter what fan game, they always manage to put in Undertale references here. I do like the fact that despite there being very little references, they are really subtle and don't take away from the experience of the game. They aren't in your face like having Papyrus and Undyne crash through Jack's door in the beginning of the boss. The developers were clearly trying to go for a more original take on the Egos and Jack in terms of story and character, rather than just worrying about references. Good for them! I like these subtle Easter eggs that aren't in your face, and it makes me want to go back to watch these older videos Jack uploaded just out of curiosity and know these references. I'm pretty sure at this point everyone knows about Billy from Happy Wheels or the FNAF games that Jack has played, and though it doesn't take away from the experience of the game, it just seems so in your face to the point that it can get a bit repeatedly annoying. We get it! Jack played Undertale! You don't need a constant reminder of how often the Fish Lady and Skilled Bro tend to set things on fire! As hilarious as it is, I don't always need to see it. There's even a secret or two within the game, making you really explore and check out every nook and cranny of the areas, which most of these RPGs are known for. My favorite is by far when you go into the treehouse when you try to find Marvin. There's this strange bear and you have the option to take it, and when you do, you battle whatever the hell this thing is. According to the files, it's called omitted in all capitals, or at least when you face it in battle, it's called SU1ITOXMTICU. This thing is just straight out of a horror movie, being all glitchy and telling us how much it hurts and to give it back. I've never felt so much chills from a YouTuber fan game in my life. And what's more, you can't even defeat this creature. It ends up killing you and it makes the game crash as a result. And the music is very unsettling. Like I said, this game can get dark. It's really never explained what this creature is, nor is it mentioned the rest of the game. But it will be brought up in the sequel, so remember that. For the most part, aside from that nightmare fuel, this game checks off most of the boxes for a fan game. Story that's easy to follow, engaging characters, easy mechanics, references from Jack's YouTuber and personal life. Yeah, this by all accounts seems to be an impressive game the very YouTuber would play as well as his fans. However, that being said, I will admit that I have some problems with this game. The main plot always feels like it takes too long to get to the point. It's not really a bad thing, but it feels like we're doing too many things at once. The worst example is when we're in Attitude City, you have to locate the university to find out what's going on, then you have to find Jackie, but you don't know where he is, so you have to locate the Cool Patrol, then you have to recite the song from the music video, you gotta maneuver through the sewers a certain way, then you do a boss battle with Jackie. It's not like they take away from the experience, but it does seem like padding and doesn't really get into the main details. It doesn't feel like we're seeing the Egos to save them either, but rather just to stop by and say hi when we know there's a possibility of them being corrupted. It also feels like there's a lot of padding at certain points. Like after you save Jackie, it takes you out to get some drinks. After we go to Chase's house, we take a nap while Chase goes crazy. The plot at times seems to take different directions in terms of how they wanted to meet the Egos rather than stick to just one canon reason. There's also instances where it feels like the characters don't really understand what's going on, or even what's right in front of them. Like when they try to find Marvin in the middle of the woods and get confronted by a white cat with blue eyes and has symbols exactly like that of the magician's mask, and they don't know who it is. Really? You guys couldn't have figured out it was Marvin himself? I mean, I give Sean a pass because I'm sure he never canonicized that the magic user could transform, but I would have expected Jackie to have known since he and Marvin are close. And they allowed Chase to go by himself in a broken world where Auntie could still be a threat. They aren't really the brightest at times, and there's also the art. Not that it's bad, it's pretty cute, but I noticed that the anatomy is kind kind of off. Like, their heads are really big, and they also have 4 fingers rather than 5. It's not really a big of an issue, but I don't know. When they're based off of real characters and they have cartoon-based fingers, it's just kind of weird. I know it's not really a major issue, everyone has their own style, but the cute style seems to get in the way of certain moments that need to be taken seriously. Like the scene where the gang confront a corrupted Chase. He jump scares us by turning his neck exorcist style, which would be creepy if not for the fact he bleps before it. And it's kind of weird. There's also the point when you face Auntie and he's just sitting on the chair with Gerald in his lap. It's really cute to the point you forget he's done all this bad stuff to everyone. Then he gets possessed by these neon green lights, again a bit weird. However, I will say it's only minor issues because everyone has their own form of art they use. And it works here. Alright, with those things out of the way, it's time to discuss the ending. If you don't want any spoilers, go to this timestamp here. You've been warned. We good? Okay, after rescuing Chase from the corruption and one more talk with Bing, we headed to Auntie's home, which is a log cabin for some reason. Not gonna lie, this giving me flashbacks to when Jack lived in Ireland, but if that was the intention, then good on you devs. Jack and his group are forced to confront Auntie, who still believes he's doing the right thing for everything he has done, and even apologizes for hurting everyone. Well, at least he admits he's sorry, and that's the best you can get out of most villains. Henrik, who still believes in the glitch, refuses to fight, and leaves the match for the rest of us. Well, wait a ditch us, you white mage! This is why I didn't put my best equipment on you! The fight between Auntie takes 2 phases. The first one is the standard Auntie, who took inspiration from Darkiplier, obviously. Once you defeat him for the first time, he transports Sean's into a small area with a little patch of land in a wide open space. After being dropped off, you then get to have another information session about the egos. Schneepelstein, Chase, Bing, Robbie, Jackie, and then Marvin. All leading up to the reveal of Auntie's true identity, Angus Irwin. Yes, Angus Irwin, the survival hunter. He was the persona that Jack had taken up during his Let's Play of Far Cry 3, which was in 2013, back before he even showed his face, which meant that he never had a canon appearance. Angus Irwin is, or was, the first and official Septiceye ego. However, due to Jack not doing anything else with him after the Far Cry series, Angus was eventually forgotten and quote-unquote died. As it was mentioned before, if an ego doesn't get attention from Jack and or the community, their soul becomes unstable and they die. This is a very well thought out plot twist and a great twist villain reveal. We saw many clues leading up to the reveal of Angus and his true motives. The cross in the woods before meeting up with Marvin, the picture of Bing as the survival hunter, the yellow carnations that appear which symbolizes betrayal, which is how Angus felt when Sean forgot about him. The flower being called A, not for Auntie, but for Angus. Hell, even Auntie and Angus start with the same letter. The hints were all there, but they didn't give us enough information to say it outright. It was up to the audience to figure out. And an interesting fact, they never planned on making Angus the real villain until 4 months before the game was supposed to have been released. A last-minute decision is what changed the whole format of the game and made it come with such a shocking climax. This is how you do a twist villain right. Take notes, Disney. So now, it's up to Sean to defeat Angus. Afterwards, you're left with 2 choices. You could raise your weapon and defend yourself, only to end up killing Angus in the process and make things far worse. So we're just gonna lower our weapons because this is Undertale logic and you always go for the pacifist for the best ending. After embracing Angus in a hug, the light that cures the corruption is reunited with Angus, having a heart-to-heart, or in this case soul-to-soul, conversation within him and helps to restabilize Angus's soul and gives him the positive feelings he was lacking in the beginning. After the fight, we head back to the cabin where Sean and Angus have another heart-to-heart talk. Angus is admitting that he only wanted to keep his creator locked up and have the egos take control of his channel so they wouldn't be forgotten and face the same fate as Angus did. Angus only survived because he ended up taking the soul of another ego that was forming, aka Auntie. Psst, remember this in the sequel. And yes, I know I've said this a lot, but trust me, you will need to remember this all. Due to how the fandom was deciding how to make Auntie, there were 2 souls, a negative and a positive one. Angus ended up taking the negative soul, which is why he became the Auntie in the beginning of the game. And the positive soul was with Sean this whole time, and now that it's been reunited with Angus, he feels much better and less mad at Sean. Even though both sides have had a truce, they both know that the damage has been done and there's nothing they can do to fix it. However, they both agree to go their own ways and leave things as it is, hoping for a better outcome now. Though Angus does request not to tell the other egos who he is, since he wants to be the one to tell them when the time comes. Sean agrees, and after Henrik acting like a dad and the other three asking many questions, Auntie brings Sean back to the real world in his body, with the YouTuber thinking of reintroducing Angus back into his community. This actually does explain where the survival hunter character from the Septic Egos came from. For a long time, I had no idea who this guy was. I assumed he was a fan-made character, kind of similar to Bing and Robbie. So when I found out who he really was in the videos, it baffled me to learn his origins. But now, Angus, or the survival hunter, has become a growing part of the Septic Egos. And good for him. He deserves the spotlight as much as the others. Though I doubt we will ever be able to see anything Angus related from Jack anytime soon, the fanbase is giving more and more of a community in honor of Erwin himself. After the game, there are a few cutscenes, one where Bing and Auntie reunite and the two fall in love. And it's revealed that Bing knew that Auntie was Angus this whole time, I'm assuming because Auntie probably told him since, well, Bing assumed he was dead and didn't really know Auntie was Angus. It makes more sense if you actually play the game. The last run right after the credits is when Auntie is back in the lab and going over some tests with Schneep. He assures Schneep that it was not the serum that caused the corruption, it was only the after effects of being reminded who he really was. After getting the Auntie's soul, he had no memory of his life as Angus, and the serum revived those long-lost memories, as well as his hatred towards Sean. After calling the doctor his dad and a pretty fluff-based hug, Henrik allows Angus to sleep, only to be disturbed by two voices. This is where we get introduced to the two souls that are keeping Angus as Auntie, the positive and negative souls, also known as Posse and Nega. Yeah, not the most creative names, but hey, they're good for puns. Posse is the angel of the two, while Nega looks like a demon. It's revealed that they have been helping him, and Posse helped cure the corruption of the others, though no one aside from Auntie can see them, and he is stuck with them. So he literally has a shoulder angel and shoulder devil. Oh, I see what you did there. So that is Septiscape, and I can see why people are talking about it. It's a standard RPG with decent puzzles and familiar faces, but the plot and the dialogue really separated from that of other Jacksepticeye fan games. Again, rather than just playing as Jack, we get to interact with his egos and learn what the fan base thinks of them and the stories they have come up with, as well as headcanons. It's a really neat idea and it shines through. Heck, even the Angus being Auntie this whole time really caught me off guard. I'm not saying that Angus Erwin being Septiceye should be a canon for this ego, but I'm also not against the idea either. It does have some problems, I'll admit, but in my opinion, a game, movie, or show is great if the pros outweigh the cons, and this game really does just that. This would also snowball into a sequel that would come out a few years later, but we'll talk about that at a later date. So yeah, it's a solid game and I would highly recommend it to Jack. Doubt he would ever see this, but if you do, please check out this game. Same for everyone else. It's an enjoyable experience and will give you an insight on what Jack's community is really like. If you are curious about this game and want to play it, I'll leave a link down below for you to check it out. Or if you'd rather watch a Let's Play, check out Wolf Mama's channel with her and I play the game and see our reactions to it. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and if you liked it, punch that like button in the face like a boss! And that was my Jacksepticeye impression. So with that said, sayonara, and stay classy, my otakus!